Thank you. Good. Well, I just want to welcome everybody. This is such important work. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to serve your community in this way. I love this time of year, and I love being able to hear all of your discussion on some of these really important projects that we're going to talk through today. Can we just do a really quick intro of everybody? And I'm happy to kick off. I'm Fran Paleo-Moyer. I'm a Dane Arts Commissioner. I work for UW, running a whole bunch of statewide outreach programs, but my background is in arts administration. I work for several orchestras around the Midwest. Also ran a Conservatory of the Arts for UW Stevens Point. And I'm a flautist and I sing in the Madison Symphony Chorus. So that is my background. Maybe Allie, would you go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Allie Schreier, and I'm the development manager for Arts Midwest, which is one of the 6 U.S. regional arts organizations. They're based in Minneapolis, but fully remote. So I got to stay in Madison. Prior to being at Arts Midwest, I was working with the Madison Symphony Orchestra, writing their grants and assisting with sponsorships. My background is tuba. That was my undergrad experience, primarily playing in chamber ensembles, but my journey to tuba was through the flute. So good connection there.
The 2 instruments that use the most air.
Yes.
Great. How about Lisa? Oh, you're muted, just saying.
I keep doing that. My name is Lisa Allred, and I am I own a piano studio in Madison, and well, Fitchburg actually, but most of my students are from Madison. And so yeah, I have a studio that I run out of my home. I'm a piano teacher. I'm also a violinist and a choral singer, and did all 3 of them in college. And but piano is my main instrument and my main focus of study. And I'm also the current vice president, but president-elect starting in June of the Madison Area Music Educators, which is a local piano teaching, music teaching organization, primarily born out of an organization that used to be just piano teachers, but now we've changed our name and have expanded our outreach to try and include more private studio teachers as well. So I'll be the president of that starting in June. So yeah, that's
congratulations. That's great. Are you singing with anybody right now?
I'm not. I wish I were.
Yeah, I mean,
I have 3 small children at home, and so evenings are tricky. So and because of my studio, most of my students come in the afternoon and evening because that's when people are available for lessons. So not enough hours in the evening. So
for sure, understand. Well, thank you. Nice to meet you, Julia.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Julia. I work at UW doing like database and admin support for a research center. But my arts related background is just doing like musical theater and choir more in high school, but I also did choir in undergrad as well. And I should be doing choir in my life now, but I'm not. But
email me if you want to know about one audition.
Yeah.
And festivals are really fun choir too to sing with. They're more international, kind of, if you're not familiar with them. All right, well, Moises, you're up.
Hello, my name is Moises. I am currently a candidate for the Master's in Arts and Creative Enterprises Leadership degree through the Wisconsin School of Business. I graduate in 5 weeks, which is pretty exciting. I'm ready to be done. Outside of that, I have my own like freelance business providing marketing for arts and cultural organization, artists, concerts, festivals. Some of my credits include being a board member and advertising the last 3 seasons of the Madison Chamber Choir, advertising last year's season of the Madlit concert series, and then most recently advertising the Business of Art conference that we had over at the Arts Laboratory and Starting Block Madison about a month ago from today. So My musical background, I studied classical voice. I'm a baritone in undergrad, and I performed with the Illinois Wesleyan Collegiate Choir for 4 years. And currently, right now, I sing with the Madison Chamber Choir. So
Awesome. Didn't know that about you, Moises. And just a shout out to Moises. He is incredible. So if you're looking for any marketing support for any of your organizations, he just really did a bang up job for the Business of Arts conference. So
Yes, I'm seconding that completely. It's really amazing.
great. Yeah, and I think you all know Augusta, but thanks for being here with us, Augusta. Appreciate it.
Yes.
And I think we
Thank you.
lost Mark, right?
Yes, yeah, he was dropped off.
Popping
But
in and out.
yes,
Okay,
we
great.
really appreciate you being here, and I'm going to be here the whole time. I'll just turn my video off, but if you have any questions, I'll be online.
Great. Thanks, Augusta. All right, so by now you've read the online applications assigned to you and taken some notes and how each proposal aligns to the review criteria. So hopefully you're familiar with all of that. The commission then will determine funding based on your opinion. So this is a really crucial moment. So it's really critical that you're fair and deliberate and attentive to detail. Keep in mind, it's not an easy task for some of these groups to submit a grant proposal, and many are written by volunteers who already work full-time jobs. We don't want to jeopardize those who may be new to writing grant proposals, yet we do have criteria for judging merit of projects. So we just ask that you be considerate and thoughtful in that regard. Often the requests are for more dollars than we have to allocate, of course. So your attention to each application is critical to the success of our grant program. Dane Arts plans to award a minimum of $500 to all eligible fundable applications, just so we obviously can spread the wealth as much as possible. So just want to thank you again for taking this time. I also wanted to say we have 14 applications to look over today. So how the process will work here is that I'll introduce each review. I'll name the organization, the ID number, and the amount requested. I assume you all are pretty familiar with the new system and you can search by ID number, which is pretty nifty. The primary reviewer will lead the discussion by offering a brief overview, the strengths and weaknesses, the comments on whether the budget and supplemental materials are in order, and offer your overall assessment on the quality of the project. Then the secondary reviewer will add any additional information, and then we'll open it for discussion for a few minutes. Not everyone has to talk about every application, so there's no pressure there. If you have thoughts, feel free to chime in. And then immediately following the discussion, we'll reserve a few minutes for you to score and ideally submit your scores at that moment. We'll try to leave enough time for that. And then after we're all done, and we'll have a little break after 7. So it's not like we're, our buns will get moving a little bit. And then at the end, when we're all done with the 14, we'll have a brief discussion because we always love your feedback about the process, any recommendations you might have for us to improve it. Yeah, and then before we dismiss, we'll ask that everybody finish submitting their evaluations so that by the time we log off, everything has been submitted. Sound good? Any questions on anything? Just FYI, as a co-chair, my role is to just keep an eye on the process and the time. I'm not contributing to discussions in any way. I can't offer my opinions on things. So I'll just be listening to all of your great insights. Again, like Augusta said, keep in mind, we probably will be having some observers coming in and out. So just to be aware of that. All right, great. Any other questions? Okay. All right, great. So we'll kick off here. We're going to start with the Salon piano series, ID number 25045. They are asking for support in the amount of $5,125, which is 4.5% of their total budget. And then Allie will be leading the discussion and Lisa is secondary on this when you are ready.
Great. Okay, so the Salon Piano Series is an intimate salon setting reminiscent of the performance venues of the 18th and 19th centuries. Audiences will experience newly discovered musicians and international favorites performing in a uniquely personal setting. The Salon Piano Series features historic pianos with opportunities to learn about these heirloom instruments and the many facets of piano restoration. For the 2024-2025 season, they are offering 4 weekends of concerts between September and April at Farley's House of Pianos. As of the application date, they have identified artists for September, March, and early April, which includes some award-winning pianists and a chamber group. Tickets are $20 and $10 for youth. Actually, I might have that incorrect. I'll come back on that. They also plan to offer free masterclasses by the guest artists, and they also are now offering a recently established house concert series, which features local young musicians who then receive a scholarship and also have another opportunity to perform at the Madison Youth Arts Center. So I'll just kind of go through the strengths and weaknesses. We'll just start with some of the weaknesses. Some of it's just like really small little details as you're kind of skimming through your application. We were missing the anniversary year, probably just like a copy paste error that's happening as you're updating things. And then the season was indicated as October to May, but we've got some concert dates this season kind of falling outside of it. And the budget also included a reference to a September artist date that wasn't quite accurate, so probably another previous season date. And I think in the significance and primary community population / public value section, I would have liked to hear a little bit more about the youth experience and kind of what it's like for them to be performing in the house concerts and at the Madison, the My Arts Center, and the experience of the guest artists. I guess rather than noting the like financial and time competition that starts happening kind of between arts groups in our area. And then there's kind of reference throughout the narrative about one-of-a-kind instruments, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear about what instruments are being played, and kind of that piano restoration aspect is really unique, so it'd have been nice to have that a little bit more highlighted, just to give a little extra oomph to the application. But overall, I thought the responses had a really clear layout. Everything was really well responded to and clearly labeled. They understood the questions that were being asked and kind of addressed it in a really clear way. It's really great to see a part-time staff administrator being hired to work on it, and also expanding the series to house concerts. It's just demonstrating that there is growth happening for this series, and that's really exciting to see, especially post-pandemic. Great to see that the artists are identified, and that there's just general awareness of how their scheduling can be connected within the scheduling difficulties of a really busy art scene in Madison. The in-kind offerings, also great to see. They're working with their partners to support these efforts. Clear goals, clear outcomes. Really thought it was a good application. Specifically though on the budget, just wanted to note that the ticket income didn't quite get calculated correctly. It's $3,575 times 6 concerts seems to be what they were hoping to do, and that's $21,450, but they listed as $26,600, so that does kind of inflate the cash income that they had hoped. So again, whether it meant to be that they hoped more income was going to come in, or if the math didn't quite come out, just want to double check those details. And then comparing to their kind of profit loss statement from the previous season, just kind of felt that maybe some of the project income was a little inflated. So if it feels like you're going to be kind of reaching for these bigger goals, just kind of nice to have a little more details about how you're hoping to make those achievements. But overall, really great to see this program expanding. So I will pass it off.
Lisa?
A lot of my thoughts were much the same as yours, Allie. I'm trying to think, what can I add here? I think the one thing that I would have liked to have seen in terms of in terms of strengths and weaknesses that I would have liked to have seen for this application would be more of the I guess I was unclear in the discussion of house concerts and stuff like what does that entail? Are those used? I couldn't tell. Are those used more for like fundraising for the program opportunities, or are they used as like ways for? Are they just youth that are performing, or are they some adult pianists performing as well? I was just unclear about the details of that, and I know that it's a new portion of the program, so that totally makes sense. That we're still figuring that out. I'm sure that's probably part of it, but I was just unclear about how does that fit into the whole ethos of the I understand like it's the same intimate setting and that kind of thing, and that's great, and that seems to be kind of their MO, but I wasn't totally sure what is the intention there to expand awareness of the program. Is the intention there to raise more funds? Is the intention there to provide opportunities for students? I couldn't tell what the intention of that aspect of it was. As far as strengths, I agree with you that the biggest strength to me was, wow, this is a really unique way of offering these performances, and what a cool, interesting to be playing on historical instruments in a setting comparable to the way it would have been historically performed. And I would love to see that as like the but I think it's really interesting and made me want to go to one of the concerts. I don't know. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Julia, Moises, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess one note that I wanted to add in that for me, from reading this application, it's pretty evident that they have a very strong, loyal following of constituents that they serve. And I kind of am able to kind of glean that off of the financial data as well, where the majority of their funding is directly from individual contributions. And a very interesting thing to note is that they spend next to nothing on advertising. So their main, engine outside of anything that they get in kind is going to be that word of mouth. So that is a pretty strong indicator that they do have a strong, loyal consumer base that is very supportive of their work.
All right. So if no more comments or thoughts, we'll take a few minutes to score. How we've done it in the past is if you could raise your hand when you're done scoring, then I'll know everybody is. We could do it that way, or if you want to turn your cameras off while you're scoring and then turn them back on when you're done. Do you have any thoughts on which would be better or easier? No,
And then this is that point where you click the yellow submit button that I was like, don't do it. So now do it. It'll say, are you sure you want to submit? And you can click yes.
after you've scored it all. Great. Okay. All right. Yeah. So go ahead and just raise your hands when you're done, then that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my internet dropped for like 30 seconds there and I have to open it up again. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No worries. We're ahead of schedule.
So we're just hitting submit now, correct?
Mhm.
That's
Thank you.
correct. All right, Fran, I've got everyone's reviews. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, great, thanks. All right, so clear your hands if you don't mind. And then we will move on. We'll be going to ID number 25049 for the Friends of Allen Centennial Gardens. They're requesting $5,075, which is 19.85% of budget. Moises, you'll lead the conversation, and then Julia will be secondary when you're ready.
All right, sounds good. So this project, this grant proposal is specifically for summer Sundays, known as Jazz in the Garden for the 2024 season for the Friends of Allen Centennial Garden. The establishment of the Friends group about 10 years ago, back in 2013, was organized to support the educational and cultural mission of the garden. And it was kind of through that kind of mission set that the Summer Sundays in the Garden was conceived in 2016, and it is a series of free, family-friendly outdoor concerts that take place on alternating summer Sundays afternoon from June to August. And from their grant proposal, it represents the most significant program that provides arts and cultural experiences for the garden. Specifically, the 2024 season is going to present 6 concerts of alternating Sundays, June through August, each about 75 minutes without intermission, with a wide variety of jazz programming. They do note that they have this ambience that is supposed to be casual but respectful. And I think one of the biggest strengths, I'm just going to jump into kind of overview and then jump into my strengths and weaknesses as I review everything. But I think one of the big things here is that, sure, they curate a high quality set of jazz and they offer it outdoor. But I think one of the unique aspects of this project is that they perform this all within a very non-traditional space, which is the Allen Centennial Garden, a space that is not commonly used for music. They utilize it to be able to put on these performances. And essentially for the community, they're able to offer kind of a high quality cultural experience with a mix of artists and styles that may not be commonly programmed elsewhere and within a very non-traditional settings. And for musicians, they do emphasize that they are able to offer a respectful performance opportunity while also being able to offer comparable pay rates for these musicians as well. Let's see. They currently have an arts committee that oversees the event planning and management alongside the artistic director for the series, which kind of helps guide the processes. I believe as of right now, they've already selected the musicians that are going to at least perform within each of these concert nights as well. One of the most important things that I really want to point out here is that for a 6-night festival series that caters to a little over 200 people per night, they do point out that the vast majority of their support is in kind from the Friends group, community partners, which include space, labor, promotion, a lot of the operational tasks, which means that the majority of their financial budget is dedicated over 80% to paying musicians. They have access to a very robust volunteer base from the Allen Centennial Garden, and they've noted very strong support from the garden, which allows them to do this programming, which I think is very important, because if they didn't have this connection, their budget would be 6-7 times as much in order to get the manpower, the strength, and the resources needed to put something like this. So it does subsidize a lot of the costs in order to organize an event of this type. Another important thing to it is that it is free as well, since it takes place within the Allen Centennial Garden, which is supported by endowments at the UW Foundation, not part of the university budget, but the garden is open to the public free of charge 365 days per year. So the series in turn is also going to be free. And essentially they use 100% of contributed income from their budget to kind of cover those gaps in funding where they need, which is primarily people and musicians as well. One thing that I do want to note is that they did provide the in-kind value of professional volunteer time, which is at $31.80 an hour based on the value of volunteer time from the independent sector, which, very interesting enough, isn't factored into their budget. So I'm very curious to see how much volunteering power they utilize to put on a series of this type. They do note that they do engage over 150 volunteers but it would be very important for me to know to see how many people do they actually use to put on a concert of this type, because I know a lot of it is really dependent on that volunteer time. They are exploring opportunities for sponsorship funding. Currently, there's funding pending from the Riemann, EBJU, and Madison Arts Commission. And another interesting thing to note is that over 50% of their income does come directly from membership dues. I would have liked a little bit more information on that and how those funds are utilized. And I think to kind of close off, it is a heavily subsidized festival that does depend on a lot of in-kind in-kind and community support to execute. And the request for funding really is to just ensure that they're able to pay their musicians a comparable rate. And that's all the notes for me.
Yeah, I was really excited about this project. The Allen Centennial Gardens is beautiful, and it was really cool to see that most of their budget is going directly to artists. One thing I noticed, so they said it was that 80%, but I think that must have not been including their like one-time capital expenditure that they're budgeting for the sound system, because they have $6,000 honorariums and their cash budget is like about $10,000. But no, other than that, like very exciting. It's a beautiful space, and just the fact that they are able to pull together so much volunteer like hours and talent to dedicate all of their funding to, or most of their funding to artists. And then also just that the concerts themselves are free is also a really cool thing to see. Like definitely a very a project that has a lot of like merit to the community as like a whole, I think.
All right, any other thoughts?
I'll jump in if so. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the like outdoor setting. I think one of the good quotes from the grant was that they are combining the art of music with the art of the gardens. So it just like creates this additional cohesion between what they're doing and like their space. I also like the encouraging of like non-traditional listening experiences. They want people to spontaneously start dancing. They want people walking around the gardens to also enjoy the music, so they're not feeling like that's disruptive in any way. They're encouraging it. And they're also expanding the experience outside of just the concert. They've added on classes. They're partnering with other community organizations to encourage more attendance in that way. The only other thing I had was that when I opened the key personnel PDF and I think the artist PDF, I couldn't get any of the links to work. It just said, it said like listen and was underlined, which made me think it was supposed to be a link, and I couldn't get it to work. So just a small thing to make sure that all of your attachments are functioning the way that you want to. But related to attachments, their support letters were really great. Also just kind of boosted their application as well.
All right, excellent. If no more comments, we'll take a few minutes to score.
Thanks, everybody. We got your scores.
All right, great. You guys are fast. All right, so we will move on to ID number 25058 with Music con Brio. Their request is for $2,275, which is 32.27% of total budget. Let's see, Lisa is going to lead the discussion and Moises is secondary, whenever you're ready.
Sure. All right, so this project is a collaboration between the Madison Cello Ensemble and with a local, collaborating with a local handpan musician to compose, rehearse, and perform a new work for cello and handpan. In terms of, well, I guess I'll just review, I'll do what everybody else is doing. I'll review the thing first, and then, or like what's included in this, and then talk about some of the things that I thought were interesting. So just based on their application, the Madison Cello Ensemble has been teaching students and performing cello music since 2005. It is it's like it's basically like a cello choir composed of, they call themselves just a cello ensemble, but composed of 40 students ages 4 to 17, 12 advanced students ages 18 to 21, plus 4 instructors. And the leader of the ensemble is a music therapist and school psychologist, as well as a cellist. And so she has it sounds like she has a lot of the background to work with that diverse group of students. The goal for this project is to feature the handpan, which is an instrument that is relatively new, developed in 2006. They describe it as a hollow steel orb performed by a seated player holding the instrument in the lap and striking the instrument with the fingers. I've played a handpan a few times. It's basically like an inverted steel drum, is what it kind of visually looks like. Each one is unique and built. It's a unique instrument built with a unique key and scale, and they comment a number of times in the application about how Madison is kind of one of the it's uniquely placed in terms of the handpan community, because there's apparently quite a robust handpan community in Madison, which I was not aware of before this application, so that was interesting. The leader of the Madison Cello Ensemble and Addie Farber, who's the handpan musician, met and began performing together in jam sessions, and then have decided that they've wanted to collaborate. They want to create this piece tentatively titled Exploring Vibrations, which is and then it's composed for cellist and handpan drummers, and it's meant to include a range of ability levels, include students who are beginners up to advanced, and have them an opportunity to play together in a creative space. It sounds like, based on the application, that the piece is already mostly completed, and they're kind of in the final stages of finalizing the composition, and they are hoping to perform this work. They're hoping to perform this work with the leader of the cello ensemble on cello, and then Addie on 2 handpans, and then a number of other people in the cello ensemble performing it together. They'll be rehearsing at the My Arts Center, and then they'll be performing the piece in 3 different venues, one on a free performance on the Make Music Madison Day on June 21st, and then one at the Solstice celebration for the Madison Cello Ensemble in December, and then ticketed performances at the Mala Yoga Studio in next spring of 2025, to celebrate that yoga studio's 10-year anniversary. So that's kind of the overview of the program. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, I think one of the biggest strengths is simply the uniqueness of this project. Like it's an unconventional combination of instruments, and I think that's really exciting and interesting, and so that, I think, is quite a strength. It seems that that they have worked together in this ensemble for quite a while, a couple of the things that I thought were kind of more weaknesses is I wasn't clear on how they were trying to reach underserved audiences. In particular, in terms of their marketing and implementation plan, they talked mostly about just pretty conventional marketing techniques. And I found myself wondering, this is a really cool, interesting thing. Is there a way to reach more people than the people that are already affiliated with these ensembles, more people than just the people that are already affiliated with Madison Cello Ensemble, a wider audience than that. And I recognize that the Make Music Madison Day performance is part of that. But I think that was a little bit of a weakness, is that there could be a wider spread of audiences reached in that. The budget was, I felt that the budget could have had a little bit more detail. There were general categories in terms of like rehearsal space and performance space and publicity, but it was just kind of like a general publicity budget, and I wasn't clear what all are we doing for publicity, how are we reaching those groups, and then and I wasn't sure of partnership with other organizations. I couldn't see how they were I'm sorry, I can't speak this morning. How they were looking for the diversity of groups that will be contributing to this organization, or to this project rather. But they do have, in terms of strengths, in that they do have a lot of in-kind donation. My Arts is giving them a discount for the rehearsal space. Isthmus Instruments is loaning them the handpans necessary to perform. And so that is, and then they also have some subsidized printing from some different things. So overall, I think it's a really interesting project, and an exciting one. I just would love to see a little bit wider range in the groups that are going to be served. It seemed like it's a pretty small population that will be part of this project as it stands. So.
All right, Moises?
Yeah, I think to kind of provide maybe some supplemental information that would help. I know at least 3 of the organizations that they're looking to kind of push their programming out through is Make Music Madison by performing at a Make Music Madison Day, My Arts through the attendance at the Solstice celebration, and then Mala Yoga Studio. I do agree with Lisa that the Mala Yoga Studio, I think they capped it at 25 people. It is one of the ticketed events. So it does have a very small audience that they're going to serve there. But at the same time, I also considered the fact that, hey, maybe for a performance of this type with a small cello ensemble and a handpan, the more intimate, venue might create a new opportunity to be able to experience the music in a higher light too. And I think the big thing is it's hard to gauge number of impact, because I know they mentioned, we're going to be at the Solstice celebration and we're also going to be at Make Music Madison Day, but the numbers can really vary wildly. Even if they were able to just provide a general estimate of, hey, this is kind of based on what Make Music Madison generally draws, this is how many people we estimate we might be able to impact. I think that would probably give them a stronger claim to, hey, we're going to go out there, we're going to provide these free public performances, and this is kind of the estimate of our impact. I think that would help conceptualize it a lot more. I do think that this is a very unique project, and not only are they putting out a new composition, a new work through unique instrumentation, I think a lot of that, like, credibility and strength does lie within the people that are performing within the ensemble and the kind of the organizational leaders that are spearheading this effort. Obviously, they're very credible, very knowledgeable. on this process of being able to put together this composition. So from an artistic perspective, I think they have very strong leaders guiding the way there. And then finally, to kind of just briefly touch on the letters of support, I thought they were very beneficial, especially given that one of them came directly from Isthmus Instruments, which is the contributor of the Handpan for this effort. And given that, at least from the grant proposal, given that they've noted them as the expert within this specific kind of genre of instruments, at least, you know, I think that is a very credible letter of support to add into this application. But yeah, that's all my notes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll jump in with some thoughts. Yeah, I thought the feedback approach was also really interesting, that they were hoping to like capture some video interviews, just to try to get a sense of how people were feeling right after the experiences, which I think will be beneficial for them to have for themselves and probably for future potential marketing opportunities or trying to pitch the project to other people. And I also think it's interesting that they'd kind of discussed like the impact of the project activities beyond, like that they're wanting to share this composition out beyond themselves, which I thought was really interesting. But I also was looking at their age groups that they're hoping to reach, and I was kind of surprised to see that they put 0% for older adults, 60 plus. I imagine that there are people who are 60 plus probably attending like Make Music Madison and other things like that. So although it might not be their target audience, I imagine they'd still have a percentage of being able to reach a pretty wide spread of ages through some of their performance opportunities. But yeah, I think this is a really unique experience that they're offering, and I think it's great that they're kind of popping up in different sized venues to get this composition out a little further.
All right. If no other thoughts, we'll take a minute to score then. Thanks. Thanks everybody for your thoughts on that. All right, looks like we're done. If you clear your hands, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our fourth application, ID number 25062 with the Wisconsin Chamber Choir. Let's see, Julia will lead this one, and then Allie is secondary whenever you're ready. Oh, I didn't say their budget, sorry. $1,595, which is 8.25% of their budget. Whenever you're ready.
So this project is for their concert series, or their concert in, I think, June, and it is going to be featuring songs of peace from both Jewish and Palestinian artists. It looks like they put all of their concerts, like a lot of the budget kind of goes to putting together a like a video so that they can put their concerts out online as well as having it in person. And the tickets are, at least for their May concert, are $25 for just like regular adult tickets, and then $5 for student tickets. So that's like, seems decently like attainable, and having a student ticket option is really nice. The one thing that they also mentioned kind of in their description of the significance to the public and why they kind of should get the Dane Arts funding is that it will help them to implement a new low income ticket program, and partner with local nonprofits in order to kind of get that going. I didn't see a lot of detail about that specifically in the budget anywhere, so there isn't a lot of detail about how they plan to go about that. But it is mentioned here. And then the other part of the Dane funding is kind of going towards those production costs to make the concert, presentable for the online availability. A lot of the application kind of went more into their background, and also kind of like the supporting documents, the letters went a lot into kind of their work during COVID, which was really cool that they were able to kind of do some exciting things with having concerts in like their cars in parking lots, and they were able to do this like practice and concert with this technology of like using the radio and then having microphones and like doing all of this without any lag, and that was super cool. It wasn't like directly relevant to this application, but it was, they did a lot of really cool stuff during COVID. I definitely wanted to see more kind of in the details about the the benefit to the public and like the project specific details. The budget and all of that goes very deeply into like marketing and things like that. Which is good to see that detail, but again, there's not kind of as much for the specifics of like how they're doing outreach to specific like underrepresented groups. And I did also just want to note the sorry. Oh, well, just that there is like a significant amount that they get in outside funding, right? Like this is a very small percentage of their budget that they're requesting. And they have a lot of like, yeah, they have their artist dues, and there's a lot of like donations and things like that. I think sorry, my brain is also struggling a little bit. But they do have right, the actual venue has a very small or maybe not very small, has a relatively small capacity. So it does look like the most reach will probably come from having it available online and having it able to stream. I also would have liked to see kind of a little bit more detail into how they were sourcing, or like how they were coming up with the content for the theme of the concert. And there wasn't very much detail for that either, although I didn't see that necessarily in a lot of the other applications either, but I just would have been interested to kind of see for that. And yeah, otherwise I think there was like there's a good range of like age groups and different like communities being served based off of their numbers.
right, Ally? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I guess I have difficulty around submitting this application for funding, mostly because I have reviewed this group before, and the significance and primary community population served in public value section seems like it was an unfortunate copy paste error or something didn't save. I just like, I mean, looking at their applicant info and background, it's so well fleshed out. They're probably at the maximum word count. The project description is 2 sentences. And there's a ton of space right before it. So I feel like something didn't copy paste properly, didn't save properly. And in the same thing in the significance and primary community population served, the only information that we're getting around the concert is in the abstract. If they hadn't included the theme or what music was going to be performed, we wouldn't have had even that. So again, we're just like with the limited funds that are existent, I just wonder if this application needs to be in question for this. This performance is in May. There's not a lot of confirmed funding for it. It just like really is lacking a lot of confidence because the project information is missing. I'm confident that the organization can do what they're going to do because of their history, but we just don't even know what's happening with the performance. So I guess I'm just kind of curious what other people's thoughts are. We had to have this discussion at a recent cycle as well because of it felt like an incomplete application.
That was my response as well, Ali. I was like, I feel like we just missed some things, or there's just not some there's meant to be more here and there's not, because I feel like they've described so beautifully what has happened in the past, and based on that, that's really exciting, and I have every confidence that they're going to do really exciting things, especially looking at the theme of the concert in the abstract. I was like, what a timely theme. This has so much potential, talking about the connection between Jewish and Palestinian voices, given what's going on in the world. This is very, very zeitgeisty, you know. But that's the only information that I have about it is in that abstract, and I'm like, where's the rest of it? And so I'm assuming it just must be an error, but it's an unfortunate error because based on what's here, I don't feel confident in what is actually happening with this particular project based in and of itself. So,
All right, any other thoughts?
I just wanted to echo that as well. I haven't reviewed a lot of grants before, and this was one of the first ones I looked at, so I still was like, this seems a little weird, but I wasn't quite as confident to say that. But yeah.
Well, you're here to learn too, so it's all good. All right, Moises, did you have thoughts you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing, I mean, to echo what everyone said across the board, it just seems really disjointed in terms of what they're specifically asking for. I think if they would have led into the, technology support, then maybe this would be a stronger application, because at least there's some information regarding technology support. I just think the really interesting thing is that given that the concert is May and they really want to go ahead and get an audio engineer and a videographer out at this conference, usually around this time you would already have a contract signed and a down payment already made to have this individual already at the conference, or not the conference, the concert, to provide these services too. So it brings into question, even if they don't get this funding, most likely they might still already, film and capture this concert anyway. And I do think there was a lot of potential in this, given that they led with the creative aspect of it. Even if they would have just provided more meat on the theme of their concert and why a work of this type is important to release out, then I think it would be a stronger application. But overall, I think there's just a lot of information missing.
Okay, let's take a minute to score then. All right, great. We will move on to our fifth application, which is for the Handel Aria competition, ID number 25071. They're requesting $2,894, which is 11.2% of budget. Allie will lead the conversation and Moises is secondary when you're ready.
The 11th annual Handel Aria competition, promoting the performance and appreciation of Handel's vocal repertoire, will again captivate audiences. Founders Dane and Orrin Schrader are thrilled to offer the community this music for more than a decade. This is the only competition of its kind in the United States. The program also brought back the High School Singers Showcase in February 2024, where teens performed Handel arias in a free public concert, and that event was co-hosted with the Madison Youth Choirs and took place at the My Arts Building. The competition this summer is open to singers ages 18 to 35 and is anticipated to receive 150 applicants, who will then be narrowed down to 6 finalists that compete in a public competition on August 9th. This competition will be live streamed in addition to having a ticketed live audience. 3 judges will award cash prizes, and also returning this year is the Audience Favorite Award, which will offer yet another cash prize opportunity for the finalists. The live audience doubled in size from 2022 to 2023, and the live streamed videos of the competitions attract viewers from all over the world. I think the strengths of this is that there's demonstrated growth that's happening with the audience and the number of applicants, which is always great to see. They also are being thoughtful about making improvements on the experience, so like adding the extra rehearsal day. They also reference their introduction of the Madison Bach musicians as well. I think the narrative was well written, and it's also nice to have the incorporation of quotes directly from people who have been impacted. Providing the travel grants just demonstrates that they're thinking about kind of the holistic experience for the artists, and that often is a barrier to people's abilities to compete in these kind of competitions. They have relevant community partners with the Madison Bach musicians, and having the high school competition be at the My Arts Building is also great, just with the Madison Youth Choirs being like a core organization there. The timeline is well laid out and good approach to the event planning and ways to promote. The links to the YouTube videos that they provided just like demonstrate the high level of artistry that's coming from these finalists. So I imagine that the applicant pool is also equally talented. So it's really great to see that. And I think that the live streaming and the recording is helpful to the audience, as they mentioned, but I also appreciated that they referenced that it's a good resource for the artists, especially younger artists who are trying to build their portfolio. It's just really great to have high quality recordings for that. Areas that I think could be improved, just kind of, again, a theme of today. It's nice to have a little more directly addressing how you are expanding new audiences or reaching different communities. And trying to change that up, even if it's the applicants, like how are you trying to pull in diverse applicants as well? It was it kind of threw me off a little bit when I was reading the application initially with the high school showcase getting mentioned. It was like a date outside of their date range of activities, but I think was being talked about still in the like future tense. I think it's just the weird timing of like when the application was due and when the event was occurring. And I think it was also included in the budget. But like a future date wasn't mentioned for the high school activities. Yeah, High School Singer Showcase was included in the project expenses, but they didn't seem to reference a date that was after May 1st. So that also threw me off a little bit. I think it could have been like supported a little bit better if there had been like a letter of support from an artist as well. And I think we're missing an income and expense statement from the current year. So I think I was confused by that attachment as well, where the current year had like no I think I had like $0 or something. And I think, again, if you're for the additional attachments, if you're gonna provide the website, can you provide us like specific links just to kind of draw our attention to certain things and just kind of help kind of boost the application in that way? But yeah, otherwise, fairly good application. But parts of it just got a little, I think, confusing or distracted within the narrative sometimes.
All right, Moises?
Yeah, I will echo the fact that it was a really nice narrative that was written in terms of, hey, this is what we do, this is why it's important for a competition of this type. I think a really strong value added kind of asset to this organization is the fact that it's one of very few or one of the only competitions of this type within the US. And, you know, that was one of those comments that had me do a little bit extra research to say, oh, well, is that true? Is this really the only one? And as far as I'm aware, you know, this was one of the very few I could find of it. So it does have significant value in that end too. I will say, at least from my opinion alone, I think just having a direct call for funding and saying like, hey, this is why funding this effort, you know, this is how funds would be used to kind of support this effort would definitely help kind of connect a lot of the pieces within this narrative together. I don't think I got that just simply from reading the project overview. It wasn't until I got into the budget where you'll notice that in project expenses, they note everything as not covered by the grant except the honorariums for the musicians. So I guess, you know, if they would have just called that out more directly, then I would kind of understand where a lot of these pieces would fit together. And I will agree that a lot of the letter, the supports, they were very brief. I don't think they add a lot of added value specifically to this report. And just the missing 2024 income statement does leave a gap in analysis in terms of funding for this effort. So.
All right, any other thoughts? Okay, we'll take a minute to score. Thanks. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. You can clear your hands. We're doing great on time. So 9:40 is our Middleton Community Orchestra, and we're 2 minutes shy of that. So you're doing great. Okay, ID number 25074. The Middleton Community Orchestra is asking for $5,250, which is 12.19% of their budget. Lisa, you'll lead the conversation, and Julia is secondary. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so the Middleton Community Orchestra, I'll just I'll read a little bit from their project description and background. Performed by outstanding amateur musicians from Dane County in collaboration with some of classical music's brightest local stars MCO's 14th anniversary concerts are affordable, accessible community events and perfect for audiences of all ages. General admission is $20 and all students, including college age, are admitted free of charge. This project expands the MCO's reach by performing one concert at the new downtown Handel Music Center, UW. The MCO is comprised of musically proficient, mostly non-professional musicians who enjoy the commitment of rehearsing weekly and performing challenging orchestral music. They also provide a rare and sought-after opportunity for many of the community's rising stars to solo with the orchestra at each concert. The population served is a combination of the orchestra's musicians, guest artists, and audience patrons. So this application, I thought that there were a number of strengths. I think to me, the biggest standout strength is that it kind of filled this niche of performers and populations served in terms of serving an amateur audience in a place like Madison, where there is quite a thriving professional arts community. I think it's important to also have a place for, or they talk about how it's important to also have a place for amateur musicians to participate in their art, who maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to participate on a higher quality level. They also, another strength of the application, I thought, was the addition of the Young Artist Competition. They launched this competition in September of 2019. And it sounds like they launched it kind of as a one-off, as a trial, but then it ended up being really successful, and they've made it an annual event. This competition and concert, an annual event. Students audition to perform with the orchestra, and then 3 winners are selected, and then they have a concert where those young artists, those youth, can perform their selected solo work with the orchestra accompanying them, whether that's as a concerto or another form. They also mention how for that young artist competition performance, they get a much higher than usual proportion of the audience that are youth that participate in their school orchestra programs. And so then those young audience members get to see their peers perform and become aware of that opportunity for themselves, and so on. Another strength that I found looking at the budget is I appreciated that they have they of course includes a stipend for their artists and the conductor, but they also include a stipend for those youth, which I think is a valuable experience for youth to be able to have as I am preparing this, I am performing this, and I am being compensated that this work is valuable enough to merit compensation. And then they also have another strength of the application, I thought, was looking at the budget. They have a wide variety of individual contributions. There we go. They had a number of individual donors contributing a significant amount, particularly for individuals, and so that shows me that there is definitely a wide support. They have a very enthusiastic support base for their organization and for this programming. The letters included in their application, the letters of support, were written by current and former members of the orchestra who had the experience of playing in that, and that kind of spoke to that value added for populations that are non-professional musicians but really thrive and enjoy participating in a musical community. There was, in terms of weaknesses, there were a couple of things that were just a little bit unclear, and as I was reviewing it again shortly before this conversation, because this is one of the first ones that I looked at, so it had been a little bit. As I was reviewing it again, they mention that at one point in the application, I think they mentioned that they're estimating revenue from 700 tickets, but then at another point in the application, it looked like they were mentioning revenue from 700 tickets per concert, but then the size of the the venue was less than 700, and so then I was like, wait a second, how does that work? And then later, in a later point of the thing, it looked like they were referring to 700 tickets over the course of the 3 concerts, and so or 700 sold tickets over the course of the 3 concerts. And so anyway, it was just a little bit unclear in terms of that. And then in terms of other, and the other kind of main weakness that I saw was they talk a lot about it sounds like they are wanting to include and bring in underserved populations, and they try to do that by making it accessible for students. But I'd be interested, is there a way to promote or invite people who aren't students to also participate and have access to an event like this? And that was really that was something that I think could be beneficial, reach a wider variety of racial and racial backgrounds, and people of a larger number of ethnicities and things like that, to bring in people. If there's a way to diversify that a little bit more, that could be a valuable thing. But by and large, I thought it was quite a strong application. Their narrative was well written. Their timeline was very well laid out and organized. Their goals were very specific, and they had their evaluation methods were very seemed to have a concrete method in place of how to evaluate the success of their event. And that the main goal, that one thing, quote from the application, is a well-played concert to a large audience is always our goal. And that they aim to have a full house at every performance, even if that means that only 50 to 60% of the tickets are actually sold and the others are given away. Sounds like that's important to them, and that I think is a valuable thing. So yeah.
Thanks, Julia.
I wanted to add, or just kind of emphasize, the free student tickets. Definitely, I think it's valid to question how they're kind of reaching out to other underserved populations, but it is nice, especially with them having the additional concert this year that is downtown on the UW campus, that really kind of elevates, I think, that accessibility to students. And then also, yeah, to just kind of echo the importance of having that place for like an amateur artist to be able to still participate and grow and practice is really great. And yeah, the timeline and goals, like the whole application was very well like detailed and seemed pretty clear, and just kind of like really broken down, which was really nice to see.
And I meant to say this too, the supporting letters were very heartfelt and beautifully written, and seemed to have really impacted these people. And I was like, wow, this really matters to these people. That was the supporting materials were very strong, I thought.
All right, any other thoughts? All right, we'll take a minute to score then.
Can I hop in on one? Was the Aaron Rupert letter, was that blank for everybody? Mine downloads with no content.
Yeah, it was blank for me.
Okay. So just something to double check too on attachments when people are
I
uploading.
can't remember.
Yeah, it opens up as having 0 content in it. So the 2 of the 3 opened, which is good, because I'm glad they included a third, because we still got to review 2 letters. But something to just keep watch of. And I guess the only other thing I want to comment on is that the Young Artists competition, I would argue, is not a rare opportunity. It happens with the symphony, it happens with the chamber orchestra, it happens with WISO. So I think there just needs to be some different language that's being used around that. And the discounted youth tickets are also great, but they say that it makes it accessible to everyone. and that's not true. It makes it accessible to youth.
Right.
So just kind of little things about that within the narrative that I understand wanting to make strong statements that push your application forward, but also just kind of be careful how it's being phrased.
Good thoughts, thank you. All right, we'll take a minute to score then. All right, fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so our last application before the break is Con Vivo Music with Life, ID number 25083. The request is for $2,445, which is 19.68% of budget. Moises, you will lead the discussion, and then Lisa is secondary. And then you can put your hands down too, by the way. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Moises.
All right, sounds good. Con Vivo, which they put in italics, Music with Life, is a dynamic professional chamber music ensemble comprised of 11 core musicians drawn from the Madison Symphony Orchestra, Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, and other regional performing groups. Their mission is that as we, the members of Con Vivo, strive to perform the classical chamber music repertoire to the highest artistic standards, by presenting affordable, informative, and entertaining concerts, our goal is to enrich, enhance, and expand the cultural and fine arts community of South Central Wisconsin. I think it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's a chamber ensemble. My first question is, what makes you different? I think one of the more unique lines I've read through this grant proposal was that they include an element of surprise through all their concerts, which is unannounced additions, antiphonal performances, unusual encore selections, which at least for me, you know, it's hard to conceptualize how that adds value unless you're there directly and you get to experience it. But I guess that is something unique. To accommodate community members with economic, transportation, and health challenges, they want to present a free public preview of each ticketed concert at Capitol Lakes Retirement Center. They also perform selections of the program to high school music students, which I believe the school that they picked was Oregon, or maybe, yeah, music students at Oregon High School. So essentially they're looking for kind of support to kind of cover their season, which includes the ticketed performances, the free public performance at Capitol Lakes, and then finally the kind of matinee or youth performance at Oregon High School as well. And let's see, a couple of the strengths is that what I do like is that they are using a variety of venues for their performances, and they kind of call out different segments and accessibility to where, you know, First Congregational Church is able to provide access to maybe the upper class or people that can afford to have the tickets. Capitol Lakes is for people who may not have the transportation or economic needs, a much older audience, and then directly going to the high school to create, you know, those engagement opportunities with youth. This is another unique thing too. They did cite Arts and Economics Prosperity 6 as a reason for adding value through the work that they do by highlighting, hey, here's the overall holistic economic impact of arts programming. From an advertising perspective, as an advertiser, this is another unique note too, but I do find it interesting that they mentioned that they use Nextdoor for their advertising. I think it's a very underutilized platform, but not a lot of people use it. I'm not weighing that against them. I just thought that was a very interesting comment that they use. Another strength too is that they did highlight specific areas where they can continue to grow as an organization, primarily being able to develop their donor database and developing, fundraising events. I would have liked a little bit more detail in terms of, hey, how would these assets be important into kind of sustaining the organization at large? And finally, I do like that they have some qualitative and quantitative indicators of success, and how they notated that they have a staff member identified to kind of carry forth this evaluation process. Funding is currently confirmed for the Lattman and Roland Foundation, and just a few budgetary notes. The majority of their budget, about 60% of their expenses are for artists and people, and the other 30 are for admin. And then they kind of have an equal split in terms of kind of revenue streams between earned individual contributions and grants. One of the big and a big area for improvement is that there wasn't any budgetary notes provided. And I think that was one of the big kind of gaps in terms of being able to understand, all right, how do you financially tie a lot of these pieces together to perform your performances? That information is missing. And I think it would kind of provide a lot more kind of context in terms of, hey, how are you using the funds to carry forth a lot of these unique projects, especially in terms of the Capitol Lakes performance and the Oregon High School performance. I think having that piece of information missing, it makes it hard to kind of connect the pieces. Instead, you have to look at it kind of holistically of, hey, this is what it costs for us as from a season to do this type of work. But yeah, that's all the comments I have on my end.
That was what the last part of what you were talking about there, Moises, is kind of my main notes in terms of things to improve. Were I would have liked to have a little bit more detail in the budgetary of where they talk a bit about expanding their fundraising, expanding their ability to draw on funds from multiple sources. But it sounds kind of like a nebulous, like, we'd like to do this, but I wasn't sure that I didn't see a whole lot of specific evidence of how we'd like to do this, or what we're hoping to do, or what we're hoping to accomplish. And so just a little bit more specificity in terms of how the fundraising that you'd like to do is going to be occurring, and what are your plans for that, and actionable items about what's going down to make that happen. Similarly, I also really appreciated the recognition that you need both qualitative and quantitative methods of evaluation. They mention that evaluation criteria will be specific to the venue, and a checklist format will be utilized. I would have loved to know. They kind of talk about like what the indicators of success are, but not a lot about how do we like, these are what we might look at to find success, but what are you going to do to evaluate that? And I would have liked a little bit more, just a little more specificity. Same kind of thing as with the fundraising. Like, I'd love to see a little more specificity about what specific evaluation we're gonna do to figure out, measure the impact and things like that. What are we looking for when we go to the school and we're performing for these students in the classrooms, and how are we trying to achieve, or how are we trying to achieve those goals? What is the goal of that? And so that was my main thing. But by and large, yeah, I agree with the diversity of venues and the diversity of audiences and multiple different, especially for what appears to be quite a small organization. I thought that's admirable that they're already thinking about how to branch out and reach multiple different groups, even with the small size. So.
All right, any other thoughts?
I just wanted to point out, I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but the breakdown percentages of ethnicities goes over 100%, which I would imagine just mostly probably means that they meant to lower the percentage that they put for white/Caucasian, but maybe they had something else in mind when they were putting this together.
Okay, good thoughts. Thank you. All right, we'll take a minute to score. Okay, I'm gonna guess Moises is probably submitted his scores. Augusta, can you confirm?
Yep, I received that.
Great. All right, excellent. Oh, well, good job, team. Everybody's giving some really great thoughts onto the application. So really appreciate your feedback and your scoring. So I think we'll take a little break here and resume at 10:10. So look forward to seeing you back. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Great job so far.
All right, fantastic. Everybody's rejuvenated, got some oxygen in their lungs. All right, we'll start right up. Madison Opera 25094. They're asking for $5,000, which is 7.14% of their budget. Let's see. Julia will kick this one off as a primary, and then Allie is secondary. Whenever you're ready.
So I was very excited by this application. The Madison Opera, they're in their 4th decade of having these student performances of their operas. The specific project is the Barber of Seville, which is the student matinee for 2024, taking place in October. And one of the things that really stood out to me, just above and beyond the existence of the matinee itself, is that they have educational materials and like study guides that they put together beforehand to send out to the schools that are going to be attending. And that they also put together like kind of like behind the scenes online content before the matinee as well, of like interviews with people in the show and things like that. Again, for teachers to kind of like incorporate into the classroom. And then one other thing they mentioned, so right, the student matinee, it is a full production of the opera. It's not like, you know, abridged or like lessened in any way, but the one thing that they add is during the intermission where they're doing like all the set change and everything, they leave the curtains up so that students can kind of like see, you know, even more behind the scenes what's going on, and even just see a place potentially for themselves in all the different opportunities that there are in theater beyond just being like a performer on the stage. So I thought that was really cool. The for the letters, one of the letters was even from a student who saw an opera at a student matinee and then like has now come back around and is performing in them. So that was also really, really nice to see. And then for the financials, they mentioned that the cost per student for the matinee is $5, but that they do have a lot of like ways to give like further aid and waive costs for schools that qualify, and that they have different partnerships like with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and there's a high school apprentice program, and yeah, sorry. They also mentioned that they are only one of 2 opera companies in Wisconsin that put on fully staged opera. And they sorry, the application, it's very detailed. They go into a lot about kind of like their general background, but then also a lot about the student matinee and how they do the outreach to different schools, trying to kind of like you know, make sure that they're reaching all throughout Wisconsin, not just like in the Madison and Dane County area. And that they anticipate about 1,000 students attend the student matinee each season. There's a wide range of like racial and socioeconomic representation throughout all of that. Although I did notice for this one also that their breakdown of ethnicities comes out to like just above 100%, but it was pretty close. And Yeah, I just think they go kind of into some research at the top of their project description of, you know, how important it is to have art education for students and how much that like enriches their overall just education. And I can, you know, just personally attest to that as like someone who's grown up in Madison and went to MMSD. Like we've always had just in my experience, like incredible access to the arts. And but I do know like every year that is getting harder and harder and less. So the fact that they have this very established kind of program that they put on and that they are getting students in to like see and really deeply engage with this kind of art is really great. Yeah, okay, sorry. I think that is what I have to say.
Allie?
Great. Yeah, so strong application from a organization that's been engaging students and audiences for a while. I just wonder if they would have fit a little bit better under arts and education, just because there is not really like a public performance opportunity, which is kind of how we've seen these other applications in this music category structure, whether it's that part of it's public and part of it's ticketed or free or something. So I just wonder if it would have lived better in the arts and education category for this. But the student guide being attached and the videos, I think it enhanced the application. It just showed very exceptional artists that were happening. And I did like that they highlighted what occurs differently at the matinee versus like what's happening at their evening performances. And I think it is just a unique opportunity for students to see the art form in a place where they're with their peers. And sometimes the concert hall can be a little intimidating otherwise. So kind of being able to go in people all your age can really make that experience more accessible. I think something that could have enhanced the application is, I guess, knowing what schools they typically are working with, or how they're reaching into different schools, whether it's trying to reach rural schools or more diverse schools, how they're doing that to get those audiences in. And I think in some ways the project description and the significance section kind of like mixed into one longer response. I feel like some portions of it could have been flipped around just to really solidify the focus of each response. And yeah, the support letter was great. I kind of wish there would have been a support letter from a school, whether it's like a longer time partner or something like that, just to show their perspective of it, since they're the other core aspect of this experience, rather than just kind of a comments page. I think that could have been a good just additional attachment rather than having a comments page be the response to the support letter attachment. Yeah, definitely a unique opportunity for students to probably get to experience opera in a place that's less intimidating.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to point out, at least in their application, they noted that they're the only like opera organization that offers the full staged operatic performances as a student matinee out of the two. I guess that's just another leverage for value that they do throw into their application. And I do agree with Allie in terms of, hey, you know, what specific schools are you reaching out to? Is it clear that you're serving underserved or underrepresented communities? Because, you know, they could say, oh, we reach out to a wide diverse array of schools, but if they do want to stand on the claims of, hey, we are serving underrepresented students, then, you know, a support letter from a school who may not have access to a lot of these opportunities, or even then just noting, hey, this is how we're developing communities here, at least within our own city, I think would provide a much stronger credibility to the claim there. But overall, very good application.
Okay, we'll take a minute to score then. Thanks. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll move on. ID number 25120, Just Bach Concerts, requesting $2,075, which is 10.77% of their budget. Lisa, you'll lead the discussion, and Julia is secondary. And you can take your hands down. I always forget to do that too.
I appreciate you saying that because I always forget to. All right, so Just Bach is a free monthly concert series celebrating the music of J.S. Bach. And it was founded to share the immense range of Bach's repertoire, and the musicians use performance conventions that were present when Bach lived. The concert series is a free concert series presented at noon at the Luther Memorial Church downtown, once a month from September to April. And it was founded in 2018. And during the pandemic, they started recording and presenting concerts online, but they've continued to do that after the pandemic as well. And they say that they now have over 18,000 views on their YouTube channel and almost 300 subscribers. So the things that I thought were particularly strong in this application, a lot of it were things that referring to like artistic merit. They use period instruments and performance practices, which is particularly exciting for early music and Baroque, or music of the Baroque time period. And they have the musicians performing on those historical instruments, but also using the historical styles, using Baroque bows and gut strings, which are tuned at a slightly lower pitch. And the vocalists also use stylistic conventions that are specific to the Baroque era. So they're trying to present it as close to what is historically accurate for that early music. And so it kind of takes you out of time. And then they're performing it. They mentioned how they're performing it in a church, which is where and according to a lot of the programming is according to the liturgical calendar, which is of course how it would have been experienced. So it's really tight, kind of in terms of it, innovative in terms of its historical grounding of the artistic endeavor, is really kind of taking you out of this time and into another time, which I thought was really, really strong. They also talk about how at least once a semester they program a full cantata, which uses a larger number of singers instrumentalists, and so they in order to flesh out that required ensemble numbers, they invite UW-Madison students to participate, partly as an outreach effort to invite them to be exposed to the music of Bach and in this very unique historically grounded setting, but also as an outreach method to reach the up and coming generation and so on. They also talk about how there is an important part of the concert is the education to the audience. So they introduce the history and context of the featured works, and they print the music in the program. And the concert always ends with a 4-part chorale, and they invite the audience to participate, and they give a little bit of instruction on how the audience can participate, so that way the audience is a part of the music making experience as well. All of these elements to me really, I was just very impressed. I was like, wow, they've really done their homework. They've really thought about how to make this as inclusive as possible and as unique a concert going experience as possible. The fact that the concerts are on the Capitol Square in a place that is very walkable and allows for people to come on their lunch break, or allows for people who maybe don't have access to a car, or things like that, have the means of participating and going to this free concert. I just think overall they really thought through how to make this as inclusive and unique an experience as possible. They also mentioned in the application how they intend to perform during the Make Music Madison concerts, as a couple of other applicants have mentioned as well. And they said, finally, though not directly connected to the budget for this grant application, we are continuing to grow our organization with performances in the Milwaukee area and also with a summer concert in Wausau. For an organization that has only been around since 2018, I was just kind of, wow, they've really thought intentionally, and I was very impressed. I was very impressed with how much they've tried to expand. So all that said, the income and turning to the budgetary sides of things, sorry, I gotta find my notes again, I lost them. There it is. The request percentage is like 11% of the space, and that most of the funds that they're requesting will go to artist expenses. The church provides the space free of charge, so that's a significant in-kind organization, and the instrument loans are also provided as an in-kind donation as well. They have, I would rate it as like kind of a medium amount of diversity of donors. They have some foundation / corporate support. They mentioned applying for another grant. They have some private donors and audience contributions, not a huge amount, but also they don't have a huge budget. So I didn't necessarily see that as a problem. That was just an observation, I suppose. And then the timeline and the budget itemizations were very specific. I thought this was a very strong application. I didn't have a whole lot of critiques. Yeah, so.
I also thought this was a very strong and like detailed application. One thing to note is well, obviously being so close to the square is very accessible physically for a lot of people. The concerts being on like on Wednesdays at noon does make it somewhat limited if you aren't right there in the square for attending in person, but it is really great to see that they do have kind of like the online streamed option, because that you can definitely access from anywhere that you have internet, which is really cool. And yeah, I also did really like seeing that so much of the budget does go to the honoraria for artists. That's great. And that they supply the instrument rental as part of the in-kind. That's a really nice thing to see too. Yeah, I just liked seeing the online accessibility.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I guess maybe more of a clarifying point, but they did mention that they do their performances over at Luther Memorial, which is on University, right in the middle of campus, right next to, I think, the Chazen and stuff like that too. So I guess not necessarily as close to the Capitol Square, but more accessible to the UW Madison community that's within that immediate area. I guess that's just my clarifying note.
Thank you. I wasn't familiar with where that was exactly. I appreciate that.
Okay, we'll take a minute to score then. Thank you. Okay, great. Hands down, please. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Jazz at 5, ID number 25125. They're requesting $3,000, which is 4.18% of budget. Allie, you'll lead the conversation and Moises is secondary, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Jazz at 5 has been producing live jazz performances each summer for 30 years. This year's series begins in August. These events will take place at the top of State Street and are a free neighborhood concert series for 5 Wednesdays starting August 7th. Every Wednesday evening from 5 to 8 p.m. on the 100 block of State Street, swing, Latin, fusion, and a host of other jazz styles will ring through the hot summer air. These performances host a range of youth, local, and national artists. Youth groups perform as an opening act starting at 4 p.m. The professional lineup is ideally 80% local performers. Any national bookings perform with a local band. Each performance attracts between 2,000 to 3,000 attendees. The addition of the youth jazz combos has encouraged more families to attend. The addition of a full-time event director in 2019 has allowed the organization to grow and improve its operations. And Jazz at 5 has a larger goal of becoming a pillar of the Madison jazz community through collaborations with other groups in the area. We'll start with the strengths. Being a free community event, always great. It just introduces music to a variety of people, and especially being at the location that they are, you're just going to catch a lot of people who are hanging out downtown during the summer. 30 years of experience is going to show that they're going to be successful and probably being connected to a lot of the great artists in the area and nationally. The addition of a full-time staff member also just demonstrates that they're making continued growth, but that otherwise they've been primarily volunteer-led, and being able to have your organization run for that long as a volunteer base is also a great feat. I also appreciated that they did mention that their larger goal is to kind of contribute to the larger jazz culture in the area, and that they're trying to encourage younger audiences so that the jazz scene will continue. Inviting youth to perform is a great experience for these students to kind of get that first public performance opportunity. And I also appreciated their kind of that they noticed that also then encouraged more families to attend and probably stuck around to kind of hear more professional groups and get to watch how they perform, which is also really important as young musicians are trying to figure out how they're going to do this longer. Just a few comments on areas to improve. There was a May 31st date noted in the list of dates where the community can attend it or participate, and I didn't see anything about a May date being referenced, mostly just the August performances. Kind of throughout there, I felt like there were some typos throughout the entire application that eventually started kind of becoming a little bit of a distraction. So just kind of taking that extra moment to double check what you're submitting. And it kind of, as I was reading some of the responses, I felt like they didn't quite hit on what the question that was being asked. I think, again, just the community and population and significance section felt like more, it was like an extension of the project description and didn't really like focus in on who was being impacted or even like how they were being impacted. It was more just kind of observing their impact with this program specifically. And although the support letters did come from 3 different perspectives, 2 of the letters had nearly identical language, and I can appreciate wanting to help your primarily volunteer-led organization get these letters like back to you in a timely manner and like help them focus their letter content, but it just felt a little copy paste. It didn't felt very necessarily personalized by the individuals who wrote them. So just kind of being aware of that or encouraging more like original content being included. And then the budget also became a little interesting to read. There were things that were included that were noted as $0. And I guess even if you're not spending the funds on that, I would try to either include that as in kind to demonstrate that you are having these materials provided by somebody but aren't paying for them, or just include it in the budget narrative I don't think like $0 amount line items should be appearing in your project expenses. And then additionally, under the project expenses, volunteers were being included for $1,000 as the cash amount. So I was curious if that was the volunteers being paid for their time, or was that meant to be included under an in-kind aspect of their work? And was it a specialty service being provided? Is it legal? Is it marketing? Just to kind of make that more clear. So, oh, and then also donations were included under in their income. Where was it? Donation, not earned income. Yeah. Yes, donations was listed under project income. So just kind of bump that down into the contributed income just to make that more clear. So I think sometimes the budget just got a little difficult to read and navigate as we were going through it. But yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, to kind of like jump in with some follow-up comments, I would say that a lot of like the budget narrative is pretty like confusing to be able to kind of connect the different pieces of where they're like generating their revenue and how it connects specifically to the amount of audience they serve. I know they threw around a couple of estimates of like, oh, this is how many like donations we get per performance, but it is a number that is varied. I think near the end they did mention, oh, we get about $5,000 day of show revenue. It's also interesting to note that they also have vendor revenue as well, but they don't really elaborate too much on the vendor. I think they make a very interesting comment where they utilize beer sales to estimate audience size. I think an additional supplemental attachment of, hey, how are you using this data to estimate, hey, how many people you need to serve? I think that would be very valuable information to throw into this application, but since they didn't provide it, it does leave a lot more questions. It is definitely a lot of work to do something of this type, given that it is a 4-person working volunteer board and 1 event director that's doing the organization for all this event. One thing that they didn't touch on too much, but I think is a really strong asset for them, is the fact that they do get a lot of very strong like business and corporate support for this effort. And I think that's represents a very sizable amount on their budget in terms of the funding that they get from specific businesses around the area. So something to note there. And then finally, the sponsor letters, they're all pretty brief. I don't think they add too much to strengthen the credibility of funding here. And then ultimately, 2 of them had very exact language. And I mean exact language in the fact that some of them had, one of the lines had like a typo, and it was the exact same typo between both. So at least for me, I don't feel super comfortable unless we can validate that, hey, people provided these letters and it isn't a copy and paste thing. But yeah, I think that is one of the big areas of improvement for them, you know, maybe working out a new system to get more personalized letters. So that's all for me.
Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll take a minute to score then. Thanks.
Okay, thanks everybody. I see all of the scores.
Great, thanks. Let's see, you can take your hands down. Thank you for that. All right, we'll move on to ID number 25127, Madison New Music Ensemble. They've requested $2,125, which is 27.96% of budget. Moises, you'll kick off here, and Lisa is secondary, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. The Madison New Music Ensemble is a new innovative music group that was formed in the spring of 2019 by Madison-based composer Joseph Kokiar. The 6-member ensemble is composed of vibrant local professional musicians who hold graduate degrees in music performance and perform regularly with Madison Orchestras, chamber music groups, and teach throughout the community. Madison New Music Ensemble's programs feature music written by composers in the last 30 years, which is the main kind of core of their value, that they're performing a lot of newer works. They did mention within their application that a lot of the works that they do perform is the first time that those works are being performed within the city of Madison. I think that is a very interesting value added component of the work that they do. They do make a direct call for funding in that they want to be able to cover their concerts for the 2024 and 2025 season. They acknowledge that, hey, you know, we usually use ticket sales to defray costs of musician fees, recording, and publicity, but they need the grant funding in order to close the gap. I think, you know, just making a clear and concise statement there does make it a lot easier to connect the dots between the different components of this grant application. They're also organizing a lot of like outreach concerts and residencies with young musicians, and they're currently in talks with Madison Youth Arts Center and Memorial High School to be able to set up a lot of these engagements. They do acknowledge that, hey, that their ensemble does fill a void with current music compositions while being able to provide listeners with an emotional, intellectual, and aesthetic experience. And at least for me, as someone who comes from a primarily choral background, I don't understand maybe how much or how little new compositions are being performed in the city to either validate or invalidate that statement. But it is something to consider that if they are filling in that gap of works that aren't being regularly performed, I think that is important. They do have some value added activities in terms of their pre-concert talks and post-concert Q&As with the audience so that they can kind of engage with the staff musicians and the works being performed. They do note their methods of evaluation through their post-concert talkbacks, brief anonymous surveys. A lot of it is the word of mouth evaluation by audience members, and then anything that is publicized by any critics or writers that attend the specific performances. Doing an overview of their budget, about 80% of their expenses are specifically tied to artists. They've confirmed funding from the FJU Foundation, Madison Arts Commission, and Chamber Music America, but they're also looking at Madison Community Foundation and the Rowland Foundation for additional funding. They do note that they do have a tiered ticket structure where it's regular, student, and then a pay in advance option, which shows that they're trying to create more accessible tiers of access to entry to their performances. The other 30% of a lot of their revenue is pretty much about 30% derived directly from grants. The supporting letters, I think, really speak on the fact of the quality of the ensemble, the value of putting new music into the community, and the credibility of the performers and the stakeholders that are organizing these events. A really interesting comment from one of the letters, which I thought was pretty powerful, was in a continuing era of scant government support compared to peer nations, groups like this in the US really need so little to constitute the difference between vitality and struggle. And he really goes on to talk about, hey, even any type of investment would be very much worthwhile for a group of this size. And I just thought that was a very interesting way to write a letter of support. And I thought it was actually quite effective in that end. In general, with a lot of the applications, they don't really define an audience. They define the value that they present to an audience, but their audience isn't super well defined. They touch on reaching new audiences by being accessible, but then again, you know, what are the actual efforts that you're using to reach underserved communities within that work? Let's see. I think their budget could be a little bit more itemized and a little bit more detailed, specifically on the administrative and organizational expenses, along with any specific marketing efforts that they oversee, just so that I can understand a greater holistic picture of how they're utilizing their funds to be able to produce their performances. But outside of that, that's pretty much everything on my end.
I had many of the same notes. So in terms of I agree that the the primary value added is in the uniqueness of what they're offering in terms of offering an opportunity for performances of new concert music. That's a very specific genre that is often underperformed, and I think that brings a lot of value added, and so there's that. I also agree that I wanted a little bit more clarification on who are you trying to reach and how are you going to reach them. And as I thought, I was like, part of that could be that the group is young and small, and that could be a thing that comes with size and time. But really fleshing out and quantifying as an organization, who are we trying to reach? How are we going to reach them? And what are we going to do to get them, those people in the seats when we're doing these performances in order to promote that engagement? That would be an area that could be improved, I think. I also agree that that there was just one note on the section. I'm trying to find what the implementation section. They had a really specific timeline in terms of like what they're going to do month to month in August of 2024, in October of 2024, in January of 2025, and so on. And then at the end of the section, it cut off mid-sentence. And it looked like probably they just had more words in that section than the word count allowed for. But it said they were planning to offer, and then that's where it got cut off. And so I was like, oh, what were you planning to offer? So just as an applicant, making sure that each section fits within the required word count so that we can actually see all the things that you're excited about showing us. That is important to note. But I think by and large, I thought it was a good application. I agree also in terms of the budgetary things, breaking out that project-specific administrative compensation. There's a number of different things in the explanatory notes that says that includes scheduling, programs, and marketing. And to me, that sounds like 3 different categories. And so breaking them out as 3 different categories and explicating what those specific things are, that would be helpful to see what specifically is being spent. But I agree also, Moises, that the strongest part of the application to me was that in that letter of support, commenting on how it doesn't take a lot to make a group like this be successful, but a little bit makes a huge difference. And so when we're deciding where these funds and monies should go, that is a really poignant and helpful thing to remember, I think. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on that?
And I guess too as well, like under the evaluation section, like they detail how they're hoping to evaluate, but I guess I didn't see as clearly what their outcomes are or what they're hoping to see from the evaluation. So just kind of adding that at the first part, saying like these are our ideal outcomes and this is how we want to evaluate it, would have helped that section as well. And then some of the budget narrative didn't line up with the dollar amounts that like ultimately got entered into the budget. So just kind of making sure that like as you're drafting the application that you're updating both sections, just to kind of give us that cohesive idea of what you're hoping to do, and also like include your fiscal receiver fee, just to make your budget a little bit more comprehensive as well and acknowledge that. But yeah, obviously a newer group, they're still working through a lot. And I thought it was a good application for a younger organization.
All right, fantastic. We'll take a minute to score then. All right, thanks, everybody. Moving on, ID number 25135, Bach Dancing and Dynamite Society. They're requesting $5,239, which is 2.53% of their budget. Julia's primary, Allie is secondary, whenever you're ready.
So Bach, Dancing and Dynamite does a summer chamber music festival. There are several performances throughout June. And the concerts are in Collins Hall and Hamel Concert Hall at the Mead Witter School of Music. And there are also community concerts at Oakwood, University Woods, Capitol Lakes Retirement Community. And then they will have rehearsals that will be open and held at the My Arts building. For this project, one of the things that stood out to me right away, or sorry, I can go more just kind of into the details. So performers in the series are a wide range of ages from 13 to 70. The in-person audience they identify will primarily be from the greater Madison area and Dane County. And then they also mention that they're going to be able to collaborate with the Madison Youth Choirs and Madison Choral Project for some of their performances, which they say is a very unique thing to do as a chamber festival. So I just want to mention, like, one of the first things that kind of really stood out to me is that they mention explicitly that their target audience or their general audience is upper middle class people. And they also list in their kind of breakdown of ethnicity and all that, that they expect to have 90% of their that breakdown being people who are white or Caucasian, which just stood out as a very high number to me just from looking at all of the other applications that I looked at. And then they also, in their part where they're supposed to kind of talk about how they are reaching out to underserved communities, or just what their community value is and why we should specifically give them money, there isn't really very much detail in that about having their concerts be more accessible. It looks like the tickets are pretty high priced, and I didn't see like a specific way that they kind of help to give different ranges of prices and give lower cost tickets to certain people. And then I also noticed in that section that they mentioned the Race to Equity report as something that they're working to kind of like contend with as an organization. But they mention it as though it's like a brand new report, and there's a newer version that just came out, but the original Race to Equity report came out, I think, like over 10 years ago. So this is definitely a conversation that's been happening in Madison for a long time and is pretty well known. And while they mentioned the Race to Equity report, they didn't, again, go into any detail about how they were going to kind of be more equitable in their accessibility. For the budget portion, like, this is a very small percentage. I think this is maybe the smallest percentage out of all of the grants that we have, but it's definitely one of the smallest. And they do have a wide range of financial compensation that they're getting. It looks like they do get a lot from their concert ticket sales, but they also have a pretty sizable amount of like individual contributions, and they have foundation support and some business support as well. And then there's also other grants that they're getting, PT Rowland, and then the Madison Arts Commission. And then they also kind of have, right, they do mention that like one of their biggest kind of expenses for in-kind is all of the kind of lodging and meals and things like that for their artists, because they do bring in artists from all around and want to be able to put them up. And also they mention they do mention that their goal is to have a 10% increase in underrepresented audience members, and that they want their performances to become more welcoming and inclusive of young people and underrepresented audience members, but they, again, don't really go into detail about how they expect to have that happen. The one thing I do think that they mention is that they do work with their audience members to make sure to kind of help them get into the concert venue, like if they have any physical disabilities or if they need any accessibility help in that way. Yeah, they have help, need help getting out of their cars, and they communicate ahead of time to make special plans for drop off and pickup and things. So they do mention that piece, but otherwise there's not a lot of detail for making things more accessible to like the broader population of folks. But there is a lot of other detail. They have a lot of goals that they list, and their budget again is very extensive, with listing all their different income sources and in-kind and expenses.
Yeah, so I think this application overall does one of the stronger responses to what the questions that are being asked and addressing those in a clear way. And I think artistically, they have a lot of musicians in the area who are very well known, very talented, that will raise their artistic level of what is happening. The detailed timeline I felt was very effective. I think they have one of the better responses to intended outcomes and evaluations, just kind of having specific percentage goals. So they're measurable goals that are happening. Areas of improvement, Roland got listed twice, and Pleasant Rolling got listed under a public grant, and her foundation is not public. So I don't know if that was just a mistake or if we're getting duplicated income potentially by having Pleasant Roland as 2,500, but then also listed under the foundation with Capital Lakes totaling to 10,000. So something just to watch that's happening there. I do appreciate the care that they have around the artists who are coming, like thinking about the lodging, thinking about the food, not just kind of like leaving them to be in the Madison community on their own. The third support letter wouldn't open for me. It looks like a naming issue with an apostrophe being in the naming convention. The previous fiscal year is including, I think it looks like it was this current year. So it didn't really help to compare their projections for this project, because it was not capturing this time period appropriately. And also their attachment to the Wisconsin State Journal article is behind a paywall. So like I wasn't able to read it. So if you're going to include journal articles, I think it's best if you can just either copy the text or if you can do some screenshots, just understanding that not everybody has access to the same news sites. But overall, they usually do great work. I always appreciate the marketing approaches with the consistency of the themes that they kind of have throughout, and the naming conventions that they do are always creative. But I can agree with Julia and not being very addressed how they're diversifying audiences outside of potentially age, like they kept addressing.
Right. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was just really interesting to note that within their budgetary, I believe it's their previous year budget statement, that they did record a $70,000 like net income after factoring out expenses. But it's interesting that they don't put in like salaries for their artistic directors. I don't think most of their musician honorariums are also factored in there. Looking at their revenue streams, they're heavily dependent on individual donations to do the work, but they don't really mention whether their concerts are free or they're ticketed or what that structure looks like. So I'd be really, really curious to know how that works, because I don't think they have the ticketed revenue listed as an item, and they don't really mention that kind of piece of their performances. But outside of that too, they also just through the budget information they provide, it is pretty clear that they do have a very robust individual donation structure within like multiple tiers. They have people that have given longtime support to this organization. And just, I guess, one final note on writing things. I would be kind of mindful in how they would word things. I know they have a sentence saying, hey, we're going to partner with the Madison Choral Project as the only professional choir in the state of Wisconsin. Most are largely amateur and unpaid, but would that really kind of serve the case of devaluing a partnership if they were to partner with someone that is an amateur ensemble or an unpaid ensemble? Maybe that's just some food for thought, and that, hey, there's still value on the table, and just because a group is paid, it doesn't immediately dictate value in that sense. But I would just be mindful in how they would write that. But yeah, that's everything for me.
And I just wanted to mention, I don't know if maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but they do list in the project income that they have 43,000 that they are expecting from concert tickets.
Oh yeah, okay, now I see that now. Yeah.
Which is a lot more than I've seen with a lot of the other applications, but that we've looked at a lot of ones that are kind of free to the public or.
Right, thanks. Appreciate that. All right, if no more thoughts, we'll take a minute to score.
Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand till just now.
Oh, you're good. That's all good. All right, great. We'll move on here. ID number 25138, the Willy Street Chamber Players. They're requesting $5,250, which is 10.74% of budget. Moises is primary and Julia is secondary.
Great, thank you. The Willy Street Chamber Players are a chamber ensemble that believes that the future of classical music is community-based, collaborative, and accessible to all. The Ensemble presents an array of approximately hour-long and accessibly priced events each July. Ticketed summer series performances occur in the heart of the Willy Street neighborhood, Friday evenings at 6 p.m. at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. This concert model has allowed audiences to experience live performances within a very accessible time of evening so that they can enjoy other East Madison offerings. Their specific request for funding is that they want to fund their 2024 summer events, which includes an admission-free, family-friendly community performance at Orton Park, 3 ticketed summer series performances at Emmanuel Lutheran Church, and 3 community partnerships, which they emphasize is going to be a significant contribution of this funding to be able to provide performances to Big Oak Childcare, Red Caboose Childcare, and the My Arts and WISO summer camps for youth students that are attending. I think a really strong aspect of this application, and this is one where I think they're very successful at painting a narrative to be able to highlight their significance specifically to the neighborhood that they serve. I know a lot of applications look at, hey, we're very important here in Dane County and southwestern Wisconsin, and they try to paint a very large net, but they do a great job talking about, hey, within the specific neighborhood we serve, we are a culturally significant organization. And I think another thing too is that they don't really make a lot of claims in terms of reaching diverse audiences. They mentioned that they don't have the data to be able to determine whether their audience is diverse. They acknowledge it as a gap, but simply they sit on their pillars of, hey, we're going to serve the community and be able to make the performances as accessible as possible, which I think is much stronger, is a very strong claim that they can make for credibility of funding. I really like that they have the talkbacks for each of the performances, which allows the musicians to have a more colloquial connection with the musicians or with the audience members. And then really interesting line they threw in here is that descriptions must include personal musings and not come off as a music history lesson. I think that just plays a lot into the colloquial nature of what they do, even though they're presenting a very high value product to the audience. I really like how they framed that. The key timeline of major events was provided. I thought that was very clear. Outcomes and indicators of success are defined, and they identified gaps in terms of, collecting the audience data that they don't have, and they want to be able to collect that in the future, and identifying gaps in being able to program underrepresented artists within their overall kind of artistic ventures. Interesting note, I know they marked themselves no as a youth award, but they should be marked as a special award specifically for youth, because I know they talk about doing the specific workshops with the My Arts, the Big O, Red Caboose, and then WISO. Maybe that should be updated on their application. They are doing a lot of youth work here and should be considered for that as well. The primary, at least, expense category that they want to cover with the funding is the compensation of their core musicians, which I will say they are paid pretty well at $850 a performance per musician. And they also offer funding to include travel stipends and flight and mileage reimbursements for any guests that they bring in. I think that is a very good rate in order to pay chamber musicians as well. And they also are able to kind of draw a lot of their significant funding from local business sponsorships. They noted the Weary Traveler, Madison Sourdough, Alchemy Cafe, which I believe is a lot of businesses that are within kind of the Isthmus, east side of Madison area. So they do kind of are able to display the credibility and the connections with the community that they have there. And they also noted that they also did a $20K individual giving campaign, and some of the funds are going to be utilized for that as well. Finally, just looking at the support letters, it's one from both letters are directly from their collaborators, Red Caboose Childcare and WISO Music Makers. And they're kind of able to emphasize on the fact that, hey, they're also doing a lot of this youth programming, and they're making a lot of these resources accessible to our students as well within the community. And I think that really kind of nicely ties a lot of things together. I think overall, this could become a lot stronger of an application if they would have made it just directly for their youth programming efforts, because then that would kind of tie a lot of the specific niches and a lot of the specific claims together. But as a general, hey, we need to fund our 2024 events, it's pretty good in its own right. So that's all I have to add on my end.
Julia?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, oh, well, I guess just first that I do agree that they definitely seem to demonstrate that they should have the yes for working with children and or youth. And I was also really impressed just by all of the different community collaborations that they do have. Like they definitely have a really broad range of support there from the community, and also that even for the ticketed events, the tickets are at least I think in their budget they break them out as either being $20 or $5, which again is like a really is, and they do say that it's an accessible that their prices are accessible, but I agree those are very like accessible. And then right, they have the free performance as well. So they really are kind of like doing a range of modalities there, which is really great.
Any other thoughts?
Just a note for, I don't know if the applicant will see this or if they're here or not, but in terms of, they mentioned that they have a gap in diversity in terms of audience's reach, and I agree that with you, Moises, that acknowledging that gap and then talking about, we acknowledge that this is a gap and we're trying to fix that. They do in a lot of their offerings of like performers and things that they're presenting, they do have a lot of diversity in the types of music that is programmed. William Grant Still is a Black composer. Jalen is a Black rapper, hip hop artist. There's a number of others. There's a Beninese composer on there. There's a number of women. They do have a lot of programming from people of minority backgrounds, and I knew that because I knew those people, but it doesn't say that in the application. And so I just thought, I'm glad that I knew that, because I could see that. I could see that effort for inclusivity. So just in the future, it would be, I think, good for the applicant to just point out that these are ways that we are being inclusive, and not rely on the panelists' knowledge of the things. I was glad that I happened to know that already about that programming, but that would be something that they could do in the future to just point out, hey, this is how we are being inclusive in these ways. So that's all.
All right, thank you. We'll take a minute to score them. All right, fantastic. We will move on to our last application. ID 25155, Grace Presents. Their request is $4,000, which is 32% of their budget. Allie is the lead and Lisa is secondary. When you're ready.
The Grace Presents concert series provides free monthly concerts connecting Madison's diverse communities to local musical performances in the acoustically resonant historic Grace Church. Offering a range of musical styles reflective of Dane County's cultural diversity, these free concerts feature exceptionally talented, locally based musicians. Concerts will all be held in the main worship space of the Grace Episcopal Church and will also be live streamed on their YouTube channel. Since 2011, Grace Presents has offered an eclectic program typically taking place on the third Saturday of the month from noon until 1 p.m. The series is driven by 4 core principles. 1, support the local music community by featuring Dane County musicians to the fullest extent possible, supported by strong publicity. 2, pay the artists a fair fee for their services. 3, provide additional community enhancement through educational programming featuring the genre, the musician, or both. 4, present a diverse mix of American and international genres, situating music not as just entertainment, but as an illuminating reflection of and point of access for Madison's diverse cultural and ethnic landscapes. This funding request specifically asks for support of the artist fees for 10 concerts, and so that'll be 8 Saturday noon concerts and 2 midwinter concerts occurring between May and December of this year. The Midwinter Concert Series is an expansion of the program. As of January 2024, the Midwinter Concert Series offers a collection of intimate chamber concerts on Sunday evenings at 5 p.m. These concerts are under an hour in length, and they also include a free meal that's provided by the volunteers from the Grace Presents team. Strengths, that winter expansion is really great to see, just again demonstrating some growth in the programming. I'm happy to hear that they're maintaining the virtual option. It helps reach audiences who cannot attend otherwise, and especially since they really do emphasize diverse programming with the artists, it does allow them some international reach, which they seem to note. I appreciate that the application is really focused specifically on the support of the artists, and they demonstrate their support for these artistic endeavors just by increasing the honorarium in 2022. So just always having awareness around what they're paying these artists, I think, is important. I think it's thoughtful that they're looking to hopefully also offer a digital survey option, since they currently do paper surveys. So again, trying to reach their digital audience or just create that more accessible survey experience. I think that their implementation is well thought out. They're working to expand their reach and always seeking continued growth. Questions that I did have was kind of around the ethnicity percentages that they provided. Again, it didn't quite make 100%, but also the ethnicity percentages didn't, in my opinion, really line up with the age demographics that were happening based on like who is in Dane County and censuses that have occurred. I understand that they are offering diverse artists who are performing, but I don't know if it's coming from their paper surveys that they're feeling that these ethnicities are accurate for the audiences, but I don't think diverse performers necessarily always automatically translate to diverse audiences. So I think I just would have liked more information on where these percentages came from. And with the season kind of already starting in May, it would have been nice to provide any of the artists that they have considered or are already planning to have, just to kind of show that the planning is in progress and just to give us a sense of how their season is playing out. I think for the YouTube page as well as just like an additional supplement, I think just highlighting specific videos that you'd like us to see would be helpful instead of just kind of sending us to your general YouTube page. The fiscal receiver letter is old. It's from 2016 and addresses the Madison Arts Commission, not Dane Arts. So something to be aware of there, that we need an updated fiscal receiver letter. And yeah, I think the only other way to kind of elevate the implementation section, it would be to have kind of the dates that things are happening, like how far in advance is stuff happening. Otherwise, I think I feel good about what they presented outside of having some concern around the fiscal receiver letter being old.
I agree with everything you said, Ellie. I think the one thing I would add is on the budgetary or on the budget side of things, they mention in the text of the application about how volunteers help, particularly with that midwinter concert and the meal and distribution and so on. But there's no mention of any volunteer time or volunteer efforts in the in-kind donation section of the budget sheet. And so just that's something to just be mindful of, that, and perhaps they didn't include that because I don't know, maybe there's no volunteers surrounding the concert itself, and that's just to do with the, the meal afterwards, after the concert. But in my mind, that sounds like it's part of the whole event. So just a little bit unclear on that, and some clarification on that. It surprised me to see no in-kind donations listed in the budget, and I would imagine that they probably do have that. And so quantifying that and including that in part of your budget helps make it a stronger application. And so I think that that's something to note. But as far as the diversity and thought for inclusivity, I was impressed with that across the range. And it seems like it has a good ground base of support already. It seems like there's a good community of people that feel strongly about this event, just based on the YouTube and the letters and stuff. So yeah.
All right, thanks. We'll take a minute to score. All right, everybody, give yourselves a hand. Woo! Great job. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your thoughtful conversation, your attention to detail, recommendations that you've made to the groups. It's great that we record these so they can tune in and listen. So really appreciate your time and dedication. We'll really weigh in on your scores and thoughts as a commission in making these final funding decisions. So again, thanks so much. The commission is going to meet on Wednesday, April 17, to make final decisions for the funding cycle. So all of your work will be put to good use